Okay. Segundo que vuelvo a poner en loop esto. Ahí le cambio. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here today. So I think this is our 6th or 7th TVO Talent Forum. And for me, it is just an honor to have such great people today. We have Ingrid Christensen, that is going to be the keynote. And we're going to have such a great topic today to talk about. It is about blending brands, where personal and corporate brands meet. So we're going to give the room to Ingrid so she can introduce herself and she can, start with this awesome forum. Thank you, Ingrid.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. I am so excited to dive in. So I'm going to share my screen and you're going to see some mountains for just a second. They're not going to stay there. There you go. All right. I think we're good, right? Perfect. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I am so excited to be here. Today, we're going to talk about personal branding, corporate branding. What the heck are they? What do they mean? Why do they matter? How do we get them? Why do we need them? All the things. I'm going to talk for just about 15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to a really great panel who has a variety of different ideas and visions about what personal and corporate branding is. And then we are looking for some juicy questions from the audience. So make sure you think of all the things that you've ever wanted to know about personal and business branding. And just also want to clarify that I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm really excited to talk about this. And I actually posted on my LinkedIn page a couple of weeks ago, asking for solicitations on, who in the industry we thought kind of represented a great personal and business brand. And I was very humbled and overwhelmed when people said me. And it was kind of like something that I was trying to intentionally create for myself. And then when it worked, apparently I was surprised. So honored to be here, really excited to dive in. So here we go. So level up your brand game, you and your company, powerful duo. What the heck is it? So we're going to dive right in as soon as my mouse works. Why is the mouse not working? There we go. Okay, now we're on. Okay, so what the heck is personal branding? Forget fancy suits, a bunch of degrees. Let's talk personal branding. It's about who you are professionally, online, and offline. The same goes for companies. Their brand is their reputation. But guess what? They are connected. So our personal and business brand is very connected. So personal branding, by my definition, is the act of marketing yourself or your career as a brand. When you brand yourself effectively, you, in essence, build authority. Authority leads to influence, which then leads to trust. And when people trust you, they will want to work with you or buy from you or use your services, buy your products. And in case you didn't know, I did spend a year researching and writing a book on trust, the language of trust. So I guess I really did write the book on trust, which makes me supposedly somewhat of a trust expert. And in that year-long research, I really had the opportunity to delve into what is trust? What builds it? How do you get it? How do you get it back once you break it? And I think that trust is one of the most important things that goes into this essence of building a personal brand. So it's also this combination of how you see yourself, how others see you, and somewhere in the middle is this mysterious personal brand. But I think one of the things that it's important to remember is that it doesn't have to be a mystery. You can be intentional about creating your personal brand, and I'm hoping to try to bring that in. So this really is the core of any personal brand goals. First of all, you got to have a brand goal, right? We all have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. But the question is, how do you cultivate it? And based on your goals, how are you going to grow it? So we've actually seen several personal brands come out of our industry lately, which I think is absolutely amazing. Not only does this help elevate the individual, but for industry awareness, I think it is so crucial. Oftentimes people say we're the largest industry that nobody's ever heard of. So FYI, we need more personal branding. We need more exposure. We need more coverage, because what I'd love to see is our industry been able to cross over to other industries, and personal branding really, really helps that. So that's in my mind what personal brand is. So, but do I need a brand? Maybe, maybe not. Creating a personal brand is really a personal decision. Some people have zero interest in putting themselves out there, while others are 100% okay with it. For me, my brands are combined. My company is INGCO, which literally means Ingrid's company. So you can't have one without the other. Now, there's a lot of discussion of whether or not that's a good idea or not. But 18 years ago, when I started the company, I wasn't thinking fast forward 18 years. So that's what we got. So when I decided to focus on my personal brand, I did so with intention. And we're going to come back to the word intention a little bit later. So you are likely curious about what personal brand is, which is why you're here. So I want you to think a little bit about your personal brand. What does it represent? Who are you? and try to think of yourself in certain pillars. And that's something that we're going to talk about in just a minute when we go back to that intention setting. One thing that you might also want to start thinking about are your career goals, because a strong personal brand gets you noticed and potentially gets you hired. One idea is to build yourself as an industry expert, to become the go-to person for X. For example, Jorgelina, the talent lady, she brilliantly branded herself as a talent expert. Hello, hyper niche, right? That's what all the sales experts are telling us, that we really need to hyper niche and we need to get hyper focused on one thing. There's no confusion about what Jorgelina does. She is the talent lady and everybody knows her as such. But I bet that that was very intentional and very on purpose. The other thing about personal branding is that it's really about your skills, sure, but it's also about your values and how you communicate them. I'm not talking about just throwing random stuff out and seeing what sticks. You need to figure out what you stand for and make your mark. This gets back to intentionality. You can't stand for everything, nor should you. So when I was working with my marketing team, I created a list of topics for which I wanted to be vocal about. And that was my starting point to getting really intentional about building my personal brand. Trust is obviously at the core of my personal brand because, again, I wrote a book on it. So a lot of what I talk about is trust, and I try to weave that into all of my posts and all of my personal branding. But that's not the only pillar that I stand for. So I really had to create a list of things that I wanted to be vocal about and also leave room for spontaneity. This is one thing that I want to really emphasize and overemphasize, is that you can plan, you make your plan, right? You gotta make your plan, figure out what your pillars are, but also leave time and space for spontaneity because things are going to pop up. And you want to make sure that you have a little bit of room for creativity. And we'll get down to that in a little bit. So when you think about building your brand, online presence matters for sure. Now think LinkedIn, not just cat memes. I mean, maybe you're a cat lover and that can be part of your personal brand, but I don't see a lot of cat memes on things like LinkedIn, which for me is a really, really, really powerful personal branding pillar that I like to spend a lot of time focusing on. But not everybody needs to focus their business or their personal branding on LinkedIn. There's a lot of other platforms to do so. And I'm not just talking social media. There's lots of other platforms for which you can start to express your personal brand, right? Being involved with things like webinars and in speaking and public speaking in different organizations that you become involved in. Those are all parts of your personal brand and building up awareness about the things, again, that you will stand for intentionally. I like to think of them almost as buckets to prioritize. Now, there should be some alignment between your personal values and your company values. Again, this is that hyper niche concept. And it's really something that that I think you should spend a little bit of time thinking about. Now, this woman on the screen, her name is Marie Forleo. She is absolutely killing it in what I consider like the expert of personal branding. She is her entire company, but she is as authentic as heck. So one thing that I like to think about really is how can you build that intentionality into your pillars and into your posts. So we talked a lot about personal branding, but what if you work for somebody else? A lot of you are employees. A lot of you don't own your own company, or maybe you're freelance, but a lot of you also work for other companies. And where does that cross between come? And that's one thing I want to change the focus to just a little bit. Again, why does the screen not go forward? It's a very interesting thing. It's the little things in life, like technology, that doesn't go forward when you want it to. Your company's brand matters just as much as your personal brand matters. A rocking company brand means customers trust them. Again, there's that trust word, and they want to work there. That's my favorite word again, trust. People want to work with people they know, and developing relationships with everyone clearly is impossible. That's why it's important to put yourself out on display so you can have a larger voice, you can have a larger impact with that intentional branding. With companies, it's all about their mission, values, and the overall vibe that they put out, right? We've all seen really exciting brands and some less exciting brands. But building a strong company brand, think how your marketing campaigns align with your strong business brand and how that equates to happy employees. They tend to go hand in hand. Many companies dedicate departments to creating and cultivating what they call internal brand enthusiasts, right? There's a lot of internal communications and internal branding. These are all efforts and part of an organization or corporation to really build out that company brand and make sure that they're providing little hooks, little bits of information for their employees to jump on that company branding train. Okay, so what I have up on the screen here, Leanne Rasachak. She is a CEO at Women Venture. Women Venture is an organization that serves women. So she brilliantly came up with this post after Caitlin Clark. Hopefully y'all have seen Caitlin Clark. I know a lot of you are not in North America. Maybe you are. I don't know where in the world you are. But she's a fabulous highest scoring female basketball player. Anyway, she just signed this rookie contract, right? For 4 years, $338,000, which is amazing. Less than $400,000 base pay, not bad. But the base pay for an NBA player, for a male NBA player, $1 million in year one. So Leanne very creatively crafted this post that got a gazillion levels of interest, not just in likes, but in the comments, about this interesting conjunction, this interesting junction between media value, brand endorsements, and pay equity and pay gap. Super online with her brand, her personal brand, as well as her professional brand, right? She works for a nonprofit organization that serves women. So this post about Caitlin Clark and pay equity could not be more on brand for both of her professional and personal brands. That's where I think the beauty comes to exist, when there is this overlap and you can really meld these two personal and professional brand concepts together. Okay. Me and my company, a match made in heaven, right? You can rep your company and you can boost their brand. Think of it as an employee advocate superhero. So this post, and I tried to pull up some live, real posts of real people that I've seen do personal branding and business branding in such a fabulous way. So this post right here is a woman that I actually know, and her name got cut off, but you follow up with me if you want to know what her name is. Her name is Kat Weaver, and she works with startup organizations and helps them secure funding. So venture capital funding, all funding for all stages of startups. And she was hosting a dinner party at her house and posted on LinkedIn that she wanted access to woman-owned brands that she could buy in person in like 2 days. I think she lives in Texas, to bring to this dinner party. And within, I'm not kidding, 40 minutes, she had more than 100 women-owned businesses pitched at her directly. This is such a brilliant example of walk the walk while highlighting her business and upping her exposure, right? So again, she helps organizations go after funding. She helps them build their startup organization. So all she did was put a post on LinkedIn asking for women-owned brands that she could actually get her hands on for a dinner party she was hosting at her house. And within an hour, more than 100 women-owned products were pitched to her LinkedIn page. Okay, so not only did this get an incredible amount of exposure for those women-owned businesses, but also for the tons of venture capitalists that follow her because they're looking for the next up-and-coming brands. Such a simple post, such a simple example of beautiful personal and business branding that really melded together, that I just wanted to highlight that. I just love the work that she's doing. So yes, you and your company can be a match made in heaven, and there can and should be overlap. So again, think about that intentionality, thinking about building out your brand in different pillars, your personal and your professional brand, and how you can overlap those two. Here we go. Okay, but how do I actually do it? Right? This is the question that I get a lot. So how do I actually get started? And do I really want to get started? So I would say the first thing you need to do is think about Do I really want to put myself out there? I think a lot of people are fearful about putting themselves out there because what would somebody else think? Are they going to be offended? Am I going to say something stupid? Am I going to be embarrassed? Right? All the millions of things that we create in our heads that get us in the way. I think I talk about this a lot also is our biggest barrier, our biggest struggle is the nonsense that we tell ourselves in our head. But if you can push that aside and just start your journey, start being intentional with building that personal brand and figuring out who you are, what you represent, and just going after one post at a time, I think you'll see that one, probably it's going to take a while. Two, all those big fears about what if nobody likes it? What if they laugh at me? What if people make fun of me? Whatever the stories we're telling ourselves. That's not going to happen. I promise. If somebody beats you up or comes after you or attacks you because of a very simple personal branding post that you make on social media, that is 100% on them. And that has absolutely nothing to do with you. So just make sure that you are willing to be willing to take that risk and willing to step outside that comfort zone to work on aligning your personal brand with your company, whether or not you are working for an organization or the organization is your own. Your values are your values at work and at home. So make sure that you're representing those values well. Now, one thing that I hope that we get into with the panel, and we chatted about this a little bit in our prep call, is companies. How are you supporting your employees' personal branding efforts? Because they reflect well on you too. And I think it's really important for those of us that are in a company style environment. It is important to support our employees and the people that work for us, because a company must and really should support the personal branding efforts of its employees. I think it's really important. And one of the other things to remember is that you can use this branding power couple. I like to think of it as the power couple when you're combining, again, that personal and professional brand to absolutely crush your career goals. So whether or not you're looking to increase your brand awareness and your brand engagement, whether that brand is personal or professional, or you're looking maybe to up-level your career, maybe you're ready for the next step. Maybe you're entering into a new industry. Maybe you just want to have an opinion. All of those things are perfectly acceptable and normal in that journey towards personal branding. But the thing is that you have to get active. Okay, so we've all heard a lot about the algorithms on social media and all the things and the times you need to post and etc. But you really have to get active. You need to plan your posts so you have content based on your pillars. Remember, I talked about that at the beginning, that you need to have at least 3 pillars at which you stand on. Anything less than 3 is a stool, right, that topples over. So I recommend having a minimum of 3 pillars that you are going to talk about frequently and honestly, and be intentional about those pillars. It doesn't matter to me if your pillars are I don't know what they are. Maybe that's about language, language preservation. Maybe it's about all the best gene choices in the world, and maybe it's about, I don't know, fast moving trains. Whatever your pillars are, it really doesn't matter. The important thing is to get those pillars and plan your posts so you have frequency in those posts. So the algorithms of the world, right? All the things that happen behind the scenes and all the social media lands that are somewhat secretive start to work on your behalf and work in your favor. So make sure you're planning your posts. But I cannot stress this enough. Make a plan, leave time for spontaneous posts so that you are fresh and timely. Nothing looks as canned and as cheesy as posts that are 100% planned 6 weeks in advance. So nothing is timely. You have to really think about those 3 pillars and how you're going to align yourself with those pillars, but also make time for fun things. Make time for spontaneity. I think that's where you can really get exciting and where you can really start to crush that personal brand, because that builds authenticity. And I know that we're going to talk a lot about authenticity when we get to the panel, so I'm not going to dive into that too much. But being intentional and really creating your voice starts to build that authenticity into your brand and into what you're trying to create, so that you can again elevate yourself as a brand expert and start to really dive into some of those trust building techniques. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is working your images. Okay, so the power of digital marketing is incredible, but you also need to align your images so they look and feel like you. So you'll see this entire slide deck has had 3 colors, right? This navy, this pink, and a few other kind of colors playing in the background. But everything that we do at INGCO for the business represents these 3 colors, I'm sorry. And my personal branding are offshoots from those colors, which is also very intentional. So think about how can you start to align and mesh that personal look with your professional look to really start to create a very strong brand. So that was kind of my final note, that I wanted to talk about images on the end, and I'm gonna stop talking because I've been going for 21 minutes here. I'm gonna stop sharing, and we're gonna lead to some questions from the audience. I see a lot of questions from the audience, and we've also got a fun panel.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. So let's give the audience time for some questions. But if you don't see any questions in the chat, or if anyone has any question, we can go ahead with the panel. So maybe Charles has a question.
If nobody asks a question, then I'll ask a question. So I want to press you, and that's putting it nicely, on this issue of INGCO. So what happens if you want to take a sabbatical for a year, or you sell your business, or I don't know, you have some kind of health incident or whatever,
Yeah.
and that
And
I remember, I just remember.
And the and INGCO is no longer there. Is that what you're saying, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Boris Becker going to jail for tax evasion, and he said the Boris Becker brand has taken a hammering. So I'm not saying you're going to go to jail for tax evasion. I'm just saying, when your personal brand is so connected to the corporate brand, what happens when you want to step away, or when you need to step away?
Yeah. Well, that is a great question, Charles. Thank you. You asked me that last week. So what happens when there's no ING in INGCO any longer? So like I said, when I started the company 18 years ago, that wasn't anywhere in my mind, right? All I needed was a business, a name of a company, and that's what I got. And that's a story for another time. Many of you have heard me tell the story, but I literally didn't know what to call the company, and that's just what it came out as. So what we do at INGCO is pretty intentional about trying to separate me from being the face of the business and letting INGCO and its pillars stand on their own. And what Ingrid does and her personal branding is a little bit separate, and the things that I talk about and the intentionality in those content pillars is something very separate. So I do try to be intentional about that separation. Now, if I were a branding marketing expert and I had a lot of extra cash to burn, because we all know that we're really rolling in the cash in the language service industry over here, that I may try to rebrand at some point. But what I will tell you, and so don't all start calling me at once, but at some point I will have to exit the company, right? I'm not getting any younger, and I may want to do something else at some point. So what I will say, without giving too much information away, Charles, is that we are intentionally setting up things on the back end, things like processes, things like standard operating procedures, things like trademarks, things that will make the company continue to go even without me, even though it still may be cleverly named INGCO, or it may be a different name, so that when I do exit, that the company will be able to continue. So those are our intentional building blocks that we are putting into place right now. So, but to answer your question, if I walk out the door and get hit by a bus, I would hope that the brand and the business, of course, we have continuity plans and all that would continue. But yeah, if I'm no longer here, I'm hoping the brand can stand on its own. And if not, the people that come after me will have to figure that one out.
Thank you, Ingrid. That was a very gracious answer to a prickly question. I'm wondering, since nobody has the guts to raise their hand and ask a question, I'll have to ask another one. What about negative branding? I mean, Elon Musk gets away with saying almost anything he wants, and it doesn't seem to do his companies any damage. What do you think about that?
Well, what do I personally think about that, or what does INGCO International think about that?
I mean, as pertains to personal branding in the
Yeah, I
context
mean, I
of
think
this
that there's a lot of people that are saying a lot of ridiculous things that should probably just keep their mouth closed. But again, I'm in no position to be judging anyone else. I think you can judge people based on where you spend your money and the companies that you support and the brands that you support and the products and services that you buy. I don't have any Elon Musk supported paraphernalia in my in my garage or anywhere else. I don't know, Charles. Apparently you can say whatever you want to say in this world and people will still buy from you. Apparently, the more ridiculous things you say, the more people will follow you and buy from you. So Elon Musk is not the only one in the world right now spurting some pretty ludicrous words.
Okay, I put you
I'll
on
leave
the
it at
spot.
that. I'll leave it on that.
Yeah, let's not get any deeper into that one. We have some questions here. So can we unmute Ana de Los Angeles Lopez, please?
Hello, everyone. My question is it possible to build a personal brand even though you're involved in different areas of expertise? For example, in my case, I'm a freelance translator, but I have also been a fashion blogger. And when I post things on LinkedIn or other social media, I don't know where to post it or how to post it because I don't want people to get confused of what are my duties at that moment. I don't know how to focus that.
Again, I'm not a branding expert. I'm not a marketing expert, but I think one of the most unique things that individuals can be are themselves. And I can think of when I look at the great kind of personal branding individuals that I look up to, they have a point of view, they have a perspective that's unique. It's not just talking about the same things. So if you're a freelance translator and all you're doing is talking about freelance translating, that's probably not very different from all the other freelance translators that are out there, right? So presenting yourself and your opinions and your expertise in a way that is very unique and individual makes you who you are, which is a unique individual. And I think that that's really powerful. And I think that's where we get into the authenticity. And authenticity, again, is what drives that trust. And that's what drives you to be an interesting person with an interesting perspective. So it may feel like a little bit of a conflict. It might feel like an internal conflict, but to me, that means that you're being intentional and authentic with your branding. So I would lean into that, and I would maybe let fashion be one of your pillars. Maybe fashion is one of your pillars that you like to talk about. I think that would be really interesting. I don't see a lot of other people presenting themselves in that way. I'd like to think of ourselves too as, when we talk about forming core values for our organization, really they're based on pillars, right? And we think about forming these core values, and we think that no other organization in the world would have that same set of core values because there's a gazillion different core values in the world. And think about your personal branding as the same. There's not going to be anyone else that is talking about the same thing that you're talking about. And that's where I think that authenticity and building up those pillars and being really consistent with your pillars then starts to elevate you as an expert in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. That's a great question and a great answer. We have a question from Cecilia Salamano. Can we unmute Cecilia and have her ask the question or her own words?
Yes, of course. Hi, Ingrid. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. So my question would be, which would be the ideal cadence of LinkedIn posting? Because what I'm seeing is that some people are posting like every day, and from my perspective, maybe that could be a little bit too much, right? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. Right or wrong, I do have thoughts. I also see people posting sometimes multiple times a day. And I think, gosh, that person is really posting a lot. Maybe they don't have anything else to do, but maybe they have other goals in mind with their posting. So I think I think there's a couple things. One, don't do anything you're not comfortable with. If you are feeling like you're over posting, then go with your gut, right? Nobody's going to sit here and tell you that you have to stop working and post 6 times a day, or I'm not going to tell you that. Maybe somebody else will. So go with your gut and do what you feel comfortable with. 2, I think the other thing to remember is that there's a whole slew of algorithms that are happening and operating in the background, which are controlling who actually sees your posts, because all posts are not visible to all people at all times. So I think that's another thing to be mindful of. And I think that when you're setting yourself up to talk about your pillars, you want to have a regular cadence and you want to do things in a planned, controlled way. But that's why I also like to say, leave room for spontaneity, right? Because I have my stuff planned out, like I've got my posts are planned, but I like to leave room for a lot of spontaneity so I can jump on something, so I can jump on a hot topic, or I can jump on what somebody else is posting. And for me, if I'm posting 3 times a day and I don't have time, I feel like I'm overwhelming my audience by over posting. I don't want to have that feeling. So I don't post as much as other people post, and that's totally fine, because I'm with you, Cecilia. Like sometimes I too don't want to drive people crazy with my posting. But then I also have to remind myself, not everybody's seen what I'm posting anyway. So it's kind of a flip-flop type situation. I think the other thing you can play around with are the different platforms, right? So I keep my the Facebook, which I know only my generation and my parents' generation are still on Facebook, but for me, it's really important to stay connected to friends and family on Facebook. So I keep that very, very personal. And my Instagram is a little bit more fun. That's where I can do kind of my more fun posts. Maybe I want to post about fashion, which I'm not a very fashionable person, so I probably would never post about fashion on LinkedIn, but I can post that on Instagram because for me, that feels comfortable. And my LinkedIn is, I try to stay as professional as possible with my LinkedIn. So that's how I use the different platforms to represent the different parts of me as well. But go with your gut. If it feels like it's too much, then it's too much for you. Might not be too much for someone else, but it's too much for you. And that's all that matters.
Great question and a great answer. So we have a question from Kendall. So Kendall, you can unmute and ask your question. That would be great.
Thanks, Charles. So you kind of answered it with this separation between where you put your personal and where you put your professional, but I find it hard, and maybe it's because I live in a small town, so I even bump into my clients at the grocery store and school pickup line where I'm in my pajamas and I'm looking ragged. So how do you, draw the line between authentic and professional? I also have a really terrible potty mouth and I like to swear. It's very much part of my personality, but I can't put this is great fucking translation on my website. So yeah, where do you draw the line between authenticity and professionalism?
Well, listen, Kendall, thanks for being here. I'm sure that everybody that's here and far beyond everybody that's here has heard swear words, right? I don't think it's the first time. And because that may be part of your personal brand and the way that you speak, like maybe lean into that. Maybe it's not every single post, but you do want to be authentic and you want to be yourself. So a couple years ago, I started thinking about what are the things that I really stand for? Like in a world where we can't say yes to everything, like what are the things that I really want to say yes to and be intentional about? Because I started thinking about this concept of if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no, right? And so I only want to say yes to the things that are really important in my life. And so I started to get crystal clear about my priorities. And number one, it was my health. Number two, it's my son, it's my family, because you've all heard me talk about my son, and I talk about him a lot, and that's a very personal thing, but he's my baby. And number three is my company, is INGCO. So I like to rank things in that order. And so you'll hear me talking a lot about my personal life when I'm talking about my professional life, because you can't take one without the other. I can't extract my son from my life and just pretend that I'm, a business owner. So I too meld the two together, but I try to do so in an appropriate way where I'm not overwhelming LinkedIn with, baby photos from my son from 18 years ago. But every once in a while, I might mention him in a post where on my on my Instagram page, it's kind of the opposite. I don't talk about my business very often. I talk much more about my personal life, and I only talk about the company every once in a while. So that's how I kind of flip-flop those two different mediums, those two different platforms to work for me. And Kendall, yeah, you're in a small town, although it's a growing town. And people are going to see you and they're going to recognize you. But outside of work, like you have the right to be who you are, and you have the right to show up how you show up. And I think it's just about being authentic and just showing up for you and the way you are.
Thank you, Ingrid. Great question from Kendall there. Yeah, we've all heard swear words before, just never on the tbotalent forum. Great. First time. Okay, so you mentioned authenticity over and over and over. Great. What would be an example of some unauthentic behavior in the context of this discussion?
Yeah. Okay. So unauthentic would be my life is perfect. This is such an amazing industry, and I love every single minute of every single part of being a business owner, and life is great. Right? That's not very authentic, because guess what? There's hard days. And there's moments when not everything is going to be amazing and when things are going to suck. And there's things that happen in the world that I feel like I have the responsibility to make note of and to comment about, right? They often talk about this concept of with great responsibility, or with great leadership comes great responsibility. And I think that that's important too, to be mindful and be aware of what's going on in the world. And so for me, when I think about somebody that's not authentic, they're just not putting their true self out there, and they're not being honest with everything that is affecting them and impacting them. I think there are times and there are opportunities when we can get really raw and real with our emotions. And I think that's, well, I know for a fact that that's one of the other drivers of trust, is that when we're real and raw with what's going on in our lives, maybe not all of the time, but that really helps build that authentic connection to the people that you want to show up for authentically.
Okay, sounds like a very, very solid answer. So if I'm understanding you right, it's like be yourself. What about if like there's a raging topic out there that you know nothing about?
Well, you don't have
Okay,
to
I don't know.
participate in, yeah, you don't have to participate in every conversation, right? I think some people just want to argue, Charles. I was at a dinner party on Saturday and there was one guy that really just wanted to argue about every single thing. And at some point that just gets really annoying. And I chose to not engage any further with him. But you don't have to say something about everything. You can pick and choose what you say. And, you know, maybe your mom was right that if you don't have anything nice to say, then you shouldn't say anything at all. It's important to have a voice and it's important to stand up for people that need protection and talk about the things that are important to us. But not everything needs to be shouted from the rooftop.
Don't you feel there's some pressure, though, that we should all talk about AI all day long at the moment?
I mean, I don't feel pressured to talk about AI all day long. I think I don't know if I've ever, I mean, I have some posts about AI. Yeah, I mean, you talk about it if you're comfortable with it. But we're all real people here. I'm pretty sure that we don't have any, I mean, there's some note takers here, but those are just, you know, those are the AI note takers. But for the most part, we're real people that are really interested in how to develop our personal and professional brands. And I maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't found an AI solution right now that can jump in my head and be me. When I turn to AI to write my posts, it doesn't sound like me. It doesn't sound authentic and it doesn't represent me or my pillars, or it doesn't look like me. So I'm still me. And I don't want to talk about AI all day long. Plus there's a lot of other things to talk about. We'll talk about those things.
Okay, couldn't agree more. Do we have any more questions from the audience before we move on to the panel?
I didn't even get to read the comments here, but I'll read those
I've
in a
sort of
second.
basically asked the people who made the comments to formulate them as a question. So if there aren't any more questions, we will jump straight onto our panel.
Let's do it.
We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
So
what's going to happen to TikTok? Are we still going to have TikTok? A big
I
question,
don't know.
right? Somebody asked about
Never used
TikTok.
it. Don't know anything about it.
I've never used it
Gotta be
either. But look,
authentic when talking about TikTok.
but I bet there's a lot of people on here that are on TikTok. So it's authentic to them.
Okay, so we're going to go on to our panel now. I will be the moderator of the panel. I'm using my coworker Lucrezia's computer, so when I write, it shows up as Lucrezia, but it's actually me, Charles Campbell. And we will have on our panel today Anne-Marie Colliander Lind from Sweden. Hi, Anne-Marie. Closely associated with organizing international conferences like Lock World, very well-known business consultant, and also president of the Association of Language Companies of Sweden, if I said that correctly. And we also have Carolina Freire, who is from Brazil. I knew that, of course. And she is a senior manager at Uber. Is that correct, Carolina? Okay. Good, welcome. And of course, Ingrid Christensen will be here on the panel as well, and I will be the moderator, and I will be kicking it off basically in as if we were all sitting up on stage in comfortable seats, like a living room format. The idea, of course, is that nobody takes over, least of all me, and that we get questions as well from the audience. You can be controversial if you want to be, and it's up to you. And I'm just going to read out some questions that I've pre-prepared. But as I said, as Ingrid said, leave room for spontaneity. So if we get some really sexy kick butt questions, I didn't quite swear, Kendall, but kick butt, you know, it's almost there. We get some kick butt questions from the ninjas in the audience, then I will definitely toss my questions in the trash and move to them. Okay? Great. So where are my questions? Here they are. I wanted to start with Carolina. Welcome, Carolina.
Hi, thank you, Charles. Thank you for having me here today. So do you have a question for me?
Yes, I do. So I've heard your opinions before, and I wanted to ask you if you think that personal branding as such is potentially killing authenticity, which is not exactly what Ingrid said at all.
Yes, that's my argument. And I think to answer that question, it's important first to define what brand is, because nowadays people use brand and marketing interchangeable. And they are not the same thing. Even though they are related, they are not the same thing. So I have no problem with people marketing themselves, promoting their value. So to me, that's marketing. But brand, if we go back to actually the original term personal branding that was coined by Tom Peters back in 1997, this was way before social media. So brand is the area of marketing that handles deals with image. So branding is about creating an image. And Ingrid correctly said about intention. So it is something very intentional, but it is about creating the perfect image. So think of Coke. What is the product? Coke is a black liquid that has no value. But the brand for Coke is, wow, it's like one of the best in history. And that's what branding is about the crafting the perfect image and putting the intention and effort in showing, promoting that perfect image. But people are not like that, right? We are not perfect. We are flawless. We are very complex and contradictory. So to me, brand and person don't go together. That's where I make the argument that on the long run, it can kill authenticity. To me, it goes down to two main points. So the fact that brand is about creating that perfect image, and people are not perfect. And to be authentic, you have to embrace your flaws. You have to embrace your contradictions. So it's just that there is there's some attraction there when you say, I'm going to create my personal brand, but I want to be authentic. Just doesn't happen. And then the second point to that argument is that a brand, by definition, belongs to the customer. So a brand only exists to meet the customer expectations. To brand yourself, then in a way, you are taking the power away from you and giving to your customer. And everything you do, everything you say will be to meet someone else's expectation. And again, I think you should do that for your business. Even if you have a one-person business, yes, do that because it's a business, right? You respond to the customers. But when you are branding yourself as a person, then you start thinking or minding your words and not saying everything you would like to say, because you are mindful of how your followers will react. And I think this is important mostly for people who work in the creative industry, like copywriters. To be creative, you have to risk saying things that people may not like, right? So you may risk to pursue your passion instead of creating a content that will go viral. So that's where I see that personal brand kills authenticity in the long run. So think about like Picasso. I don't think Picasso, when he was painting, he was thinking about his brand and how many followers he would get and what people expected of him. He was just, he knew the value that he had, the value he was bringing to the world, and he knew his craft, and he was doing that craft, bringing the value to the world. So that's how I see branding killing authenticity in the long run, just because the two things, that there's a conflict there. That I think people, it's beautiful to say you have to be authentic, but like Kane, I think it was Kane who said that she goes to the grocery and her clients are there and she's on her pajama. So if she was a brand, she would not do that, because brands have to be perfect all the time, consistently, and with the intention of being perfect. People are not like that.
Wow, that was a very thorough and deep answer, Carolina. I really like that. Perfection, yes, definitely not sustainable. Okay, I'm going to go to a question for Anne-Marie. Hi, Anne-Marie, welcome.
Thank you very much, Charles. Happy to be here.
It's the evening for you.
It is, and I've been watching the beautiful sunset outside my window, and unfortunately, I don't have any blinders, so I guess all of you have seen how the light has shaded over the course of the hour.
Well, sounds lovely. So I have a question for you, and I think I wanted to ask you something quite methodological first, which is, do you have any tricks or any news or any updates or any gossip about the latest on LinkedIn's algorithms, or things that work and things that don't work, on a more quantitative or methodological point of view, not so much on a strategic level?
Well, we could spend the rest of the evening, my evening, your day, talking about that. What I can tell you, first of all, always stay up to date with what is happening on the various platforms where you are, because what you thought you knew yesterday might be old school already today. So if you don't pay attention to the changes that is constantly going on, you might get into trouble, or at least you will see some decline in your visibility. Sorry, that's my dog asking for water. She's very spoiled. So I think that is one thing that I can tell. When it comes to LinkedIn right now, I don't know how many of you have spotted selfies with men, selfie pictures, saying wonderful things. This is right now, it's a trend. That's what we all should do. Just take your selfies or do a video spontaneously. That will go away very soon. Anything AI generated is devalued in terms of authenticity, because the algorithms have very quickly learned how to disclose AI, even though you can use AI as a very easy click saying improve with AI. If you do, it's going to not be valid as true content anymore. Another thing that I recently discovered is that if you I'm also my own brand. I'm a solopreneur, a one-woman show, even though I'm also aligned or working together with many other brands. My personal brand, Inkrease, is only me. And as we have learned on LinkedIn, that you can post from your personal profile, it will give you most certainly more views and more reactions than if you post something from your brand. But if you repost from your personal profile, to your company profile. In the past, that would mean that you would increase the reach. Now, if you do that, it's seen by the algorithms as duplicate content, which means that the minute that you repost your own created post from your company profile, it devalues in how LinkedIn is what is the word I'm looking for? How they rank your content. So keep an eye on what is going on. I mean, I can talk about this for an hour. I won't, because I promise to be brief. But constantly check up on what is new and the trends and what works and what does not work. Linked pictures was something also that we used to do in the past. You could put a URL to link to a post. You could tweak it with any image you wanted to create better eye candy. Now, no. You post the image and you post a link to the content you want to share, either in the comment or in the post itself. So this is a constant change. I'm trying to keep up. I'm learning by doing. I also take advice from others who learned the hard way. So yeah, whatever is your favorite channel which you use for your business, stay updated on the development on algorithms.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I certainly noticed myself personally here when posting about this TBO Talent Forum, I reposted somebody's post, it might have been Ingrid's, and I noticed that almost nobody saw it. And then when I did my own post that I took time to put my, more of my own words into, it got a lot more visibility. So I can certainly agree with you there. I'm going to go back to Ingrid. Going beyond the individual and looking at your corporate brand, I mean, this ties into the whole thing about INGCO and Ingrid. How do you balance that strategy for the company? Can there be news about INGCO that isn't about Ingrid, and can there be news about Ingrid that isn't about INGCO, and so forth?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think if you look at INGCO, the brand, it says a lot of things that I don't say personally, not because I don't think them or want to say them, but I allow the INGCO brand to have its own brand voice, which is different from my brand voice. So the things that I talk about are more personal to me. I may talk about language preservation, and I may talk about some things in the language industry, but I also talk a lot about leadership and leadership development. I also talk a lot about supporting especially women-owned businesses and up-and-coming startup businesses. One of my personal goals is to really celebrate and elevate other small businesses. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn doing that, where the INGCO channel doesn't do that. And I don't share, there's not a lot of repetition between what I am posting and what the company is posting. In fact, I don't do any of the posting for the company. My marketing team controls 100% of that, and they don't do any of my posting. I control that. They may help me with the pillars and help plan stuff, because again, I like to leave a lot of time for spontaneity, and that's something that's important to me. So yeah, so I look at them as two different purposes and two different voices and two different brands and two different entities.
Thank you. That's a wonderful answer. So in a nutshell, you get more personal than the company.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm talking about the things that matter to me, and the company is talking about things that matter to the company, and there may or may not be alignment, but most often the company is trying to share content that would be helpful to our target market, and when I'm sharing content, it's things that are important to me. I'm not necessarily aiming to influence. I personally don't think I have a target market, right? I'm not looking for more followers or anything of the sort. I'm just looking to say what I want to say because I want to say it, and hopefully elevate somebody else while I'm at it.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about authenticity. Where do people who have somebody else manage their social media fit into the authenticity box? You know, people who have a social
Yeah,
media
I think
manager.
I think if you've got to have a really strong social media team that gets your voice and gets who you are. I've seen it work really well and I've seen it flop. But if you are your brand, right? If you are Marie Forleo, one of the examples I used in the presentation, she is her brand. She's got a whole team that supports her, right? She's not doing it on her own. She has content creators and she has a lot of other people that are helping her her success. I mean, she owns a multi-million-dollar business that is her, and that's it. So she can't clearly do that all on her own, but her team has been trained so well to look and sound like her that my guess is I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it's something that she's created or if it's something that her team has created. But that takes a long time to get. Just like it takes a long time to train your content creators for your business, right? I'm sure we've all worked with content creators that just they hit the mark. They miss the mark, sorry, or they hit the mark. Either way. Either they look and sound like you or they don't. But that's I think where the training and onboarding and education, right? We look like this, we don't look like this, we say this, we don't say that, and making it really crystal clear for the people that are creating content for you, like how you look and sound.
Well, I guess if they're using AI to create the content that is supposed to be you, then it's like, it's not even secondhand news, it's third hand. Anyway, I want to go back to Carolina. So you have questioned personal branding as something that can potentially kill authenticity. I'm going to ask you a bit of a prickly question, since you work at a very large company that is, you know, on the stock exchange and so forth. You know, how do you navigate the waters of saying what you want to say while you also work at a very large company that you're not necessarily a spokesperson for?
Yeah, so that's why I think brands belong to business, and people should be a voice, not a brand. So, and I think Ingrid made that point when she said, you know, I am the one who manages me on social media and I have my voice. So she's a voice, in my opinion, not a brand. She's using branding to brand her business. So I think that applies to, you know, anyone like me working for Uber, a big company, but I have my voice. One of the things I like about working there is that I'm, allowed to speak up and be my voice. And it's one of the values that I admire. And one of the reasons I work there, because I can be my authentic voice, my authentic self, and have my voice. So again, I think it's not that I'm against branding, but I think if we take the concept of what branding is, like exactly by the book, you know, branding is about image. It's crafting an image, and that will kill your authenticity. But you should have a voice, and that's different. And your voice can also, and will develop with you. People are always changing, maturing, evolving. So your voice will also evolve. So when I started working, in my career 20 years ago, I'm not the same today. My voice has evolved, and I was able to adapt and adapt my voice. But if I were a brand, I would have to rebrand myself, because I changed, the audience changed. But if you know your value and you have a voice to communicate that value, then it's easier to make that evolution and change. You can work for a company and then another company. You can have your own business, but your voice, you are the same. You haven't changed, but you were able to mature and evolve that voice. I hope I answered your question. Sorry, I think I went like somewhere else, but hopefully I answered your question.
No, I think you did, and very, very artistically. Going back to Pablo Picasso, his style evolved over time. He wasn't born a cubist. So there you go. Okay, I want to go back to Sweden, smiley Sweden, Anne-Marie. Thinking about your posts, if you had to choose between quality and quantity, where would you go?
Oh, that's a very easy question for me. I'd go for quality every day of the week. I have a niche product. I have a niche audience. I don't need 50,000 followers in any channels. And I was personally never impressed by this constant chase for growth in terms of number of followers. Of course, it depends in which line of business we are and who we are addressing. So as I've said, I've been doing social media trainings since the very early beginning of social media. And I've always said the same thing. We all need a strategy for what we are doing and where we are going to do it. And no strategy is as good as you can't change it. Should you come, to better understandings, or you evolve, or you change your voice, or you change your line of business, or whatever it is, you can change your strategy. But if the strategy is aligned with who has the most followers when they die are the most happy person on earth, well, just go for it. Go find all of those followers. For me, that's not the case. I rather have 10 followers that engage and that are potential clients that down the road might want to buy from me, and that they are impressed by the things I do online or the speeches I give in Lima or whatever it is, than having 25,000 strangers not knowing what I'm doing, because I will never get them as engaged as I would for a smaller community. So since LinkedIn was on the agenda a couple of minutes ago, I never just connect. I always make sure that this person who reaches out to me is a person that is related to what I do, has core values that I share, that is, catches my attention in some way. If they are not, I'm not connecting. In this case, I already got a couple of requests to connect. I know who they are. I see that they are participants in this webinar. I can easily just say accept. But if people don't bother to write me a small message saying, hey, Anne-Marie, I would like to connect to you because, I don't know if they are worth my time or not. So for me, quality every day of the week. If I were selling cosmetics, business to consumer, heavily dependent on, repost and things like that, I would probably talk about quantity. So it all depends on who you are addressing and why and where you're doing it. So keep a strategy for yourself, for your personal brand, for your company brand. And since we are on this topic of strategies, make sure if you are a company owner or a marketing director for a company with employees, that you have a strategy for your coworkers. You can never force someone to be active on social media or engage or carry the brand for the company. But if people are interested to do so, there should be a strategy on how to do it. So an intro strategy for social media for your company's employees is a good thing to have. But don't forget to also have an exit strategy for your employees. Because if this person, for whatever reason, decides to leave the company 10 years from now, it's also good to know, what we recommend if we have to do part. What would we wish you to do with your social media appearance? It could be a simple thing just to say, okay, when you end your employment with us, we want you to change in your profile. We want to take away the profile picture that our company paid for, so that you are now associated with a new image and a new profile that is aligned with your new adventure. So strategies are a must, I'd say. No spray and pray.
Pray and pray. My gosh. Okay. Yeah, there's a very well-known international translation, localization, and interpreting company that prohibits its employees from stating where they work, and they put something like at a leading language services provider, and that is a kind of way. What do you think of that? I mean, it removes their power in terms of having a voice, or maybe it's like a way of saying we don't want you to have a voice. Or I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, I personally dislike that very much, because people will know anyway who they are and people start talking about it. If this company is afraid of losing employees to competitors, it's probably because people want to leave their company for competitors. So I would, instead of trying to prevent people from having a presence and being associated with their brands, I would probably start at the HR department and start developing a better program for your employees and make sure that they want to work for your company. Because if they are happy and you have a brand that they can be proud of working for, and I'm not pointing fingers because I don't know which company you are referring to, but rather make sure that people are happy and want to be where they are, because if they are, they won't go elsewhere. And if they do, well, this world is full of opportunities. And why would we like to keep someone who's interested in being somewhere else? We're probably better to just part ways, and hopefully that person is more happy somewhere else. So I don't see this. I don't understand when companies say to me that, oh, we don't want them to be there because our competitors might find our vendor manager, or there are other ways of finding them. So no, I don't understand.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that. So you muzzle your staff, your coworkers, so that they can't be headhunted. Sounds like a very fearful managerial style.
But I also know for the language industry specifically that I know company owners who would never connect with their key linguists on LinkedIn, because it's also very transparent that if you know that this company is a specialized I don't know, life sciences, German into Korean, and that's exactly what you're looking for, where would you go and have a look? Well, you would probably browse that person's contact list on LinkedIn. But my answer to that, if that is something that you fear, then you can have a choice. You can say that I don't want to share my contacts with others than, first level connections, or not at all. You can have them all hidden if you want. So, and if you don't want to be social on social media, you shouldn't be on social media.
Yeah, I have a client who uses the following expression, and she's the only person I know who uses it. She will say that when she wants to tell other people about something, for example, something I've informed her about, she says, I'll socialize that for you. Nothing like socializing to me is meeting people and having a drink, but or going on a bike ride or whatever. But she said, I'll socialize the news about your new quality standards. Socialize. Anyway, Lucrecia has a question for you, Anne Marie. So speak.
Hi, Anne-Marie. Sorry, my
Hello.
camera is not working.
Okay.
I was wondering, do you think that intuition is enough, or should we have a marketing strategy consulting with somebody?
Good question. Well, I know a good marketing consultant. No, but it's a good question.
Maybe you know someone, I don't know.
I
No,
think
up to what point do you think it's really worth it or not? The return on investment for this kind of strategy, does it really worth it?
so. You can spend a lot of money with strategic marketing consultants. And I think we talked a little bit about the voice. Some miss the mark, some hits the mark. If you work with someone who knows your industry and can guide you towards a smart strategy that is not overwhelming, because I think sometimes companies tend to overdo it in the beginning. It's like, you constantly fed with, you need to post 3 times a day, you need to do this, and this. I think starting small and build up over time is a good way to go about it, because I've seen many examples of companies who've taken a class or having had a consultant saying, this is what you need to do. And you see them doing it for exactly 27 days, and then it dies because it's just too much and they don't know what to post about anymore. So I think it's smart to bring someone in from the outside, but probably do it step by step. Marketing, the posting and the creating the post and coming up with ideas, it's also something that you can work with internally, engage people in the company, or take in an intern or a junior marketing person, as long as you have someone that is in control and make sure that it is aligned with your core values of the company. So maybe this was not exactly the answer to your question, but I think it's a good ROI if the people that you have at your company are either not interested in doing it, or they are overwhelmed with taking care of customers and shuffling translation projects and doing quality assurance, then their time is probably better spent doing that. But I think it's not a good return on investment if you go for the fancy strategic consultant company that might, just send you large bills and not hit the mark. So it's a balance also how big of an organization you are. But advice from the outside is always good. So even if it's only for a short briefing, bring them in, ask their opinions, ask for a suggestion on what they would advise you to do. And then from there, you can take the decision whether you want to work with them all the way, or if you just take a few ideas and then run with those ideas internally with the people that you already have.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne-Marie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lucrecia, for that question. So I have one last question for Carolina. I was wanting to know if there was any specific incident or situation that resulted in you forming your opinion about authenticity and brand and killing authenticity. Was there like a tipping point where someone really put their foot in it or came across as fake? You don't have to name the person.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there wasn't one specific incident, but what I can tell is that I'm Brazilian, but I live and work in Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley is the center of the tech world. And a lot of people here, especially tech executives, they have their personal brand. What I see is like most of those tech executives, they dress very similar. They behave very similarly. They talk very similarly. You know, even their vocabulary is very similarly. You know, there's gestures when they are doing a presentation. And that's because they have a brain, they have crafted that brain to meet the expectations of VCs and tech people in the tech world. So I would say, yes, my experience living and working in Silicon Valley shaped my beliefs on personal brand. And the more I see here, like, you have that image of a tech executive. We talk about Elon Musk, and not talk about him as a person, but he doesn't have a personal brand, and he has a lot of followers. But you take most of the tech executives here, they have the personal brand. It's hard to tell one apart from the other. So yes, I think that's what shaped my belief and my views on personal branding, is living here in Silicon Valley.
It's very interesting because, you spend a long time building up your public persona, adding followers or whatever, takes time, and maybe you do it in a disinterested fashion like Ingrid, or maybe you're counting your followers every day of the week. But whatever you're building can be destroyed very quickly if you, in the words of Campbell, fuck up one day and something nasty comes out. Like, I just think of Ellen DeGeneres. She was so famous and so powerful and so influential, and it just somehow they spread the word she was a nasty person and she lost everything. And I don't know, is she a nasty person? How do we really know, Okay, well, with that open-ended bit of banter, I think we're coming to an end. Does anybody in the audience have any final questions? Okay, I was hoping to get Pablo Lino come out with something about translations and wine to unrelated but related topics. Okay, can I get a very last small final statement from each of the panelists and Ingrid, just to close out?
Sure. I just have to say, Anne-Marie and Carolina, you were both, I have 2 pages of notes of things that I've learned from both of you. So I think what this is most representative of is that, well, you never stop learning, number one. Number two, you have a wealth of information all over, so you just have to look for it, which I think is super cool. Number 3, I think personal branding is personal, and that's exactly what it is. And so you can make it what you want. So I just commend you, Charles, for continuing to put these events together to give us opportunities to talk about things, because one of my biggest core values is that we all do better when we all do better. And one of the best ways for us all to do better is to continue learning, especially and supporting each other. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Anne-Marie, any final comments or statements?
Well, I'd like to repeat something that I have been preaching ever since I started on social media. And anyone who's been in a sales workshop with me or a training know what I'm about to say. And I think it's aligned with both what Ingrid and what Carolina said as well. And I've updated my sentence 4 times. So I started off by saying, people buy from people rather than brands, and people buy from people that they like. That was the first 2 lines, the first couple of years. Then I had to add, people buy from people that they like and that they remember, right? And people buy from people that can be trusted. That's Ingrid's favorite topic. But also, people buy from people that they like, that they trust, that they remember, but they also need to find them. So people buy from people that can be found. So for no other reason, to be present, be there to be found. Because if you search my name, one of the first links that pops up in Google or whatever search engine you have is LinkedIn. So that's a good enough reason to wanting to be on social media.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. So any final words or statement from Carolina?
Yeah, so thank you everyone for, it's been really a pleasure being here, and I also learned a lot. And I would say my final thoughts is keep in mind the difference between brand and marketing. And I echo what Anne-Marie said about, yeah, people need to market themselves, their service and their values. So yes, you need to be found, but personal branding, it's something else, may not be for you. So not everyone needs to have and develop their personal brand. What I would say is that everyone needs to know their value and the value they are bringing, to customers, to the world, to companies, and everyone needs to have a voice. So I would encourage people to really know their value and work on their voice and be found, as Anne-Marie said. That's the most important thing on being your authentic self.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Now, Ingrid just stepped out, but Ingrid thanked me for organizing the TBO Talent Forum, but I actually want to dodge the bullet and say, actually, I don't organize the TBO Talent Forum at all. All the hard work is actually done mostly by Jorgelina Venturi, the talent lady who has her own brand. So thank you, Jorgelina, sitting just one meter to my left over here. That way. Thank you, Jorgelina, for your hard work, and also thank you, Lucrecia, in that direction, who also provides leadership and insight. And then right in front of me over here is Fernando Cabana, who is our bouncing board for all of our ideas and providing us with support. So thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll have another TBO Talent Forum coming in about 1 month. It's getting busy. The calendar is heating up, and Marie, all the events are around the corner. So we'll have to pick and choose our dates for the next TBO Talent Forum very carefully. Thank you, everyone, for attending and all your ideas and thoughts. I really loved it, especially Ingrid's presentation, which I want to get a copy of. It was so good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.